Ja Morant won the 2019-20 NBA Rookie of the Year award behind incredible athleticism and explosiveness, as well as a great feel for the game. In this breakdown, we're going to look at why he was so successful in his first season, his scoring ability and his skills breakdown, his ability to run a ball screen, as well as some of the lessons learned throughout this year and what he can prove on to be even better next season. My name is Coach Gibson Pyper. You can follow me on Twitter at HalfCourtHoops. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please like and subscribe. Also, the extended version with film on Ja Morant's skills, ball screen reads, other video edits can be found in my Coach's Cut breakdown. The link for that can be found below. It can be a daunting task when attempting to break down a player's full season. It is nearly impossible to rewatch every single game, break it down with the context of opponents, timing, and the numerous things that occurred during an NBA season. My process for Ja Morant when breaking down his film was to watch at least 3 to 4 games per month during the season. In those games, trying to find either common opponents, month to month, or good teams to fully understand the development against the better opponents. I then watched all of the restart bubble games, as well as trying to see any development since the 4-month layoff was essentially an off-season to improve upon, something that Ben Taylor touched on during his podcast when discussing rookies in the playoffs. Now, when rewatching all the games and studying film I already had of Ja Morant, the focus areas that I had were as follows: his IQ plays, any adjustments that were made, his finishing, whether it was at the rim or whatever his finishing moves were, his favorite moves to attack on offense, ball screen, how he operates, how he runs a ball screen. This is basically the most important thing for a guard in today's NBA. Isolation scenarios when teams switched or he created a mismatch. Off ball, spot up, cuts, playmaking off the ball, and then his defense, seeing the defensive IQ, the effort, and then any improvements from all of these areas and what are the next logical steps for next season to reach another level. It can be difficult to discern a basketball player's IQ at times because we are usually missing a lot of context from the coaching staff and the player. We are not in the film room sessions or game preps and skill development sessions to understand what the coaches are telling them to look for or how they want to approach each game or each opponent specifically. For example, in this clip against Houston's switch everything defense, when Crowder sets this flare screen or almost like a back screen for Morant here, the entire goal of this would probably be create a flare slip situation. But instead, Morant goes for the back screen lob, kind of looking for the dunk using his athleticism. So when Crowder sets this flare screen, it's logical for us to assume that the slip was what the Memphis staff talked about, so Morant probably made the wrong read there. Now in this example, when we get a trap on James Harden in the ball screen, we don't know if the coaching staff told Morant to go trap when they're trying to hunt him in ball screens, or if he made that read on his own. So these examples can be instinctive or reactionary based on the game and how the defense adjusts, or even the second time you play an opponent. For instance, the first time the Grizzlies played the Lakers, the Lakers stayed in their typical drop coverage, and Ja was able to find success attacking them in the ball screen. This continued into the next matchup when the Lakers made the in-game adjustment to trap him whenever they ran a ball screen. Now, Ja Morant finished 7th in the NBA using a ball screen 64% of the time. So this adjustment was taking him out of the play. Now, this is where initially the Lakers hurt them by using the length and creating deflections and steals and taking the Grizzlies out of their normal ball screen offense. Ja was able to react appropriately, started to find the short roller quicker, and allowed the Grizzlies to play 4-on-3 in space, eventually led to the win. These type of defensive coverages from the Lakers were typically reserved for Dame and James Harden, an example of the type of respect Ja commanded in his rookie season. Now, the very first game of the season, we can see an adjustment and a read. First, this is out of the Grizzlies' basic 5-out offense, a carbon copy of the Bucks' 5-out action where the ball gets reversed and the big in the middle of the floor sets a single down screen for the opposite wing. Normally this would be a catch off the screen with a shooter looking for a catch and shoot opportunity, or flowing into their offense, hitting the elbow, ball screen, whatever follows next. In the first example here, we can see him looking to come off the down screen, but the Heat do a good job jamming him and preventing him from coming off clean. The play flows into an elbow touch and eventually leads to a turnover. Ja Morant obviously makes a mental note of this, and the next chance in the offense, only a few possessions later, he reverses the ball, then sets up none perfectly. Instead of coming off the down screen, he fakes it, rejects into the paint for an easy lob. This is a great example of his in-game adjustments and something that as a coach you want to see in their development, especially in the first game of his career. When you watch film, you can find adjustments everywhere. When the Rockets were pressuring him, you can see him stop and use his body to create space. In particular here, his butt to kind of slow Eric Gordon down and maybe draw a foul. And then in the ball screen, the same action when he comes off this and the Rockets are in their drop coverage with Capella when they had him, you can see him again using his butt going to the dribble hold action. So you can find adjustments everywhere you look and even subtle ones on every single play. I want to focus on 3 different examples versus 3 different ball screen coverages. The first one is versus drop. We can see here he kind of is out of control, attacks Gobert, gets caught in the air, and ends up basically just turning it over, heaving it at the rim. In the bubble, when the Trailblazers play this, we can see him attack downhill, and instead of just throwing the ball out, he's going to be patient and create some space. So here, when Dame's on his back, he creates space to the left, ends up shooting the floater. He misses it, but a great adjustment and patience shown from the regular season to the bubble. In this high ball screen, when the Nuggets ice it or send Morant away from the pick, he has an opportunity when he drives downhill to find Valanciunas for either a little drop pass or maybe even a lob or pro pass. And instead, he tries to attack and score, ends up throwing another bad shot at the rim. In the bubble against the Celtics, when Wanamaker tries to ice this ball screen here, Morant drives in the lane, pulls Cantor up, and now instead of shooting it, he ends up finding Clark on the lob. Great adjustment. In this side ball screen example, we can see him basically try to attack the baseline first, kind of stumbles, and then he's going to go to the middle, so kind of beat it over the top, which turns into almost like a drop coverage. The issue is he doesn't really create any advantage, and that allows Turner to recover to Valanciunas for the block. Against the Celtics in the bubble, we see the ice ball screen coverage setting to the baseline. Morant goes with it and finds Valanciunas on the nice little pocket pass early for an easy dunk finish and another great adjustment. One of my biggest areas of interest with Ja Morant was his shooting profile, the frequency, as well as the accuracy. Using clean the glass filters, we can see at the rim, he took 49% of his shots in the 90th percentile, meaning he got to the rim a lot. The issue is he only converted 58% of those, or in the 49th percentile. So he's middle of the road when it comes to finishing at the rim for his position, the point guard. In short mid-range, or floater range basically, he was in the 87th percentile of attempts, with 30% of his attempts as floaters. He actually converted 44% of those in the 69th percentile. So he took a good amount of floaters and also made a higher amount than the average guard in the 70th percentile. Did a good job of avoiding long mid-range jumpers, what the NBA is trying to avoid right now, only taking 6% of his shots from long mid-range and only converting 35% of them, so avoiding those was a good idea, considering he shot 35% from 3. The issue is he only took 16% of his shots from 3. So if he could nullify a little bit of those floaters and expand his range back from three-point land a little bit cleaner, then you'll see his efficiency really jump. These numbers give us a good feel to what Ja Morant likes to do on the court. He likes to attack downhill first, preferably trying to get to the rim. When he's given the floater, he will take it and makes it at a higher clip than normal. Shoots a decent amount at 3 where he's 35%, although it's clearly not his preference because he ranks 6th percentile in frequency. So adding more to that 3-point range in the accuracy and frequency would be key for him next year. Now combining these numbers with the film, it becomes clear that if you can take away those downhill attacks, you can limit his impact on offense from a scoring perspective. Of course, that is easier said than done when dealing with an explosive, shifty athlete like Morant, but when watching, it becomes clear that he really wants to get to the rim, use his explosiveness to finish, something that he does really well. We're going to focus on 3 of his finishes: a scoop layup, left-hand finishes, and floaters. The first one, the scoop layup, is designed basically to take advantage of slower players or to catch the defense off guard. So a scoop layup is basically when you go in for a normal layup, you kind of start it off lower, so it's almost going from the hip and scooping up right to the rim. So it's kind of keeping the ball out wide and going for a quicker finish for that scoop layup, something that Steve Nash did extremely effective throughout his career. Throws off the timing of the blocks, allows you to finish easier in traffic. One of the things that I noticed when I was watching the film was how often Ja Morant goes to his left hand. Not only in passing, but in finishing around the rim. You'll see him driving to the lane. Instead of going for a right-hand layup, he switches it to a left-hand layup pretty often. Left-hand finishes were clearly an intent for him, and I think he did a great job finishing with his left hand. Floater range is what I was really impressed by. Typically speaking, I don't like the floater. I don't teach it as a coach. I know some coaches do, and some coaches really love it. I just personally have never been a huge fan of it. But Ja Morant's floater is actually really effective. Like we talked about him making it 44% of the time. Of course, those aren't all floaters, but that's that floater range that we're speaking of. One of the things I really like about his floater game is how he's usually on balance. It's usually like a 2 foot, or even if it's 1 foot, it's more like a push floater, but he's not like leaning into it. So he's not taking a floater and then allowing the defense to maybe jump underneath him for a charge. He always finishes that on balance. When looking at Ja Morant's favorite moves, there's definitely one clear favorite, but he prefers in and out and hesitations first. So the in and out is basically just shifting the defense with an in and out dribble. So dribbling in towards your body and then going back out. Chris Paul favorite, but typically what this does is this shifts the balance of the defender. And by shifting the balance of the defender, you allow yourself to use your athleticism and change your speed and get downhill for those easier scoring opportunities. Combining that with hesitation, so if you in and out hesitate, basically allows you to make 2 moves in one. So the hesitation is a great move for especially guys who have explosiveness, changing that speed, going from like a gear 5 to a gear 2, going back up to a 4, and really utilizing your athleticism is something that I think he does really well. The best and favorite move he has is the crossover jab. The crossover jab is something that I first learned from Zach Boisvert, one of my good friends who runs a great YouTube channel and is a great coach at Army. But essentially it is where you cross over, and at the same time you cross over, you're gonna jab with that foot you crossed over with. So if you're gonna start on your right hand, you're gonna cross over to your left and then throw like a jab step with your right foot. So you're almost sending the defender in the wrong direction with that little body feint, and then you're going the opposite way. One of my favorite moves to teach, one of my favorite moves to watch, and somebody who's as explosive as Ja Morant, he utilizes it with great effectiveness. When focusing on the ball screen, I think Ja Morant has a pretty good feel for scoring and attacking out of the ball screen downhill. One of my biggest things that I was interested in watching his film was how he kind of hit his teammates or found his teammates. One of the things that stands out first is his left-hand hook pass. He's able to throw this kind of bullet left-hand hook pass when he's coming off a ball screen. So as he's driving into the lane, he turns and just throws it over his head with his left hand, which is super impressive for a rookie who's also right-handed. His ability to use his weak hand like this is really, really impressive. He's able to read where the help and where the help is not coming from at times. So you can see here in this single tag or shake action, as he gets downhill, there's no tag on the roller, so he's able to throw the lob pass. And this is a theme that I've noticed when I was watching all of his film, is his ability to recognize when his players, in particular his rollers, are open. He's able to find them with either the lob or the little pocket pass, and to be able to kind of control and manipulate the defense at the same time. You can see here kind of pulling the defense back and hitting the roll man. He's also able to recognize where the tag is coming from. So if the roll man stopped with either the low tag, so if the defender low here is tagging off the player on the wing, he's able to find the player open for a spot up 3. Or if the defense is cheating in off the nail, he's able to find the nail man, usually the opposite slot, and is able to hit them for open 3s as well. Just a great feel for the game. And I can talk about ball screen all day long, but in particular I want to look at his kind of playmaking out of the ball screen and his ability to kind of find his teammates. It just really stands out when you watch the film. Now there are 2 main issues when attacking in ball screens that Morant tend to struggle with this year. The first one is when teams go under and the big drops. So if they basically just go under and beg him to shoot, he didn't do great. He tended to settle for the 3, frankly, and when he tried to get downhill, it was either clogged lane or nothing came of it. But teams were more than willing to go under, especially in the restart when the scouting report came out on him. But essentially just going under allows him to shoot 3s, and teams are going to live with that for right now. The second thing he struggled against was when teams decide to switch. Obviously, the NBA is going to a switch-heavy scheme, especially in the playoffs, making you operate one-on-one. Grant Williams gets switched onto him here. Ja Morant basically has 2 things he does against switches. He drives downhill or he shoots an isolation 3. Doesn't really have a lot of creativity one-on-one yet against bigs. Does an okay job, but for the most part, he's either looking to try and get downhill or shoot a 3. If those 2 options aren't there, like we see here against Collins, if they're not there, he's basically just going to kind of pass it out. So adding a couple of isolation moves, maybe 1 move and a counter, would be the number 1 thing for me when teams are switching ball screens to add for next year for Ja Morant. Another area of improvement, I think, that Ja Morant can add for future and next season is his off-ball movement. Now this is also could be coaching and could be by designing their offense where once he gives the ball up to go space or whatever the situation is, but at times he just ends up standing still or spotting up and teams can ignore him and help off the ball. Too many times he'll give the ball up and then kind of do nothing. Won't screen. Won't do anything with it. Here we can see him enter the ball to the elbow and then go and basically just stand in the corner. And again, could be by the offensive design where they want him to start spacing and just space the floor in the corners because that's what the NBA kind of values. But also at times, I do think he, like here, he might be able to backdoor cut. And reason for this is he's such a good backdoor cutter. When he does cut backdoor, it's explosive and he's able to finish easier. He gets fouls. They're high value plays. For that when you talk about offense, basically the spot up, cut, and off screens are three of the higher value plays in basketball. So adding that to his game will really increase his ability to score and his efficiency overall. There's a lot to be left desired in Ja Morant's defense. At times he does a good job getting over screens and kind of putting pressure. The whole goal of the ball screen defense for the Grizzlies is to force the ball handlers into the lane where the big is in their trail and drop scheme. Like here he does a good job of pushing Avery Bradley down into Valanciunas and then does a good job getting kind of the rear steal on the pass there. He does a good job, in my opinion, off the ball, like at the nail. He does a good job of kind of loading in on drives or, stunting at drives. So basically when a player's driving, the responsibility is to kind of stunt and recover, not leave your man too far or, load to the ball depending on what the scenario is. Here he does a good job of loading the ball, ends up, forcing a turnover. No driving lane is available there. And again, here against the Rockets, does a good job of on this, pick and pop pass, stunting and loading to the ball. No advantage there. Overwhelmingly, Ja Morant is not a great defender yet. He has a tendency to trail way too far. I know they're trail and drop coverage, but trail way too far. And then when he does jump out of position on these ball screens, he has a tendency to kind of get stuck on the high side, and it leaves the big defending in a 2-on-1 scenario. It just puts a lot of pressure on your defense when he doesn't stay attached and has a tendency to die on screens. What I mean by die on screens is when he's hit with contact. So in this example here against the Magic, when he gets hit with this contact here, he ends up allowing the contact to hit him instead of avoiding that or fighting through a little bit tougher. But just dying on these screens, especially off ball, it just makes it really difficult to have an elite defensive system. And I think he can do it. I think he's shown flashes in some of the film that I've watched, but off the ball especially just dies on these screens and allows a high value shot opportunity to be completely uncontested. Now, the three main areas of improvement that I expect to see from Ja next year is stop jumping to pass. So it's okay to throw a jump pass, but it's not great when you jump to pass. So too many times in the ball screen scenarios, he would get inside the lane, jump in the air, and decide to shoot or pass in the moment. And to me, those were just, bad decisions because a lot of times it led to turnovers. So stop jumping to pass, but you can also throw a jump pass. That's not a problem. The next thing is using his athleticism or speed as a weapon. Too many times he would use his athleticism and speed to get downhill, but it would result in a turnover or a poor decision or out of control just because he's so fast and so quick that at times he would just get ahead of himself and his athleticism will kind of turn the ball over, if in a sense. So using his athleticism or speed as a weapon versus just using it to get downhill and try to just crash into the defense and, make a pretty poor shot at the rim. So the last is to be able to improve the three. Just get that 3-point shot to where the defense can't go under. If the defense isn't allowed to go under against Ja Morant, it becomes nightmarish because now you're dealing with an extremely good athlete with a extremely good 3-point shot. That's a dangerous combination, and as a player who used the ball screen 64% of the time and was basically in a top 10 of high usage players in ball screen scenarios for his team, he could have an unstoppable offense by himself. I expect those improvements to come. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please feel free to like and subscribe. I enjoyed making it, as well as the Coach's Cut breakdown where it includes all the extra video edits and things that I can't always include in YouTube videos that I try to give to you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to doing more.